Good day, I'm Init Katangkay and welcome to the first session of STEM Engine Tutorials for General Biology. Today, we will talk about biology, which is the science of life. First, let us define what is biology. So we all know that biology comes from the Greek words bios and logos, which means life and study, respectively. Therefore, we can say that biology is the study of life. However, if we are to expound that definition, we can define biology as the scientific study of living organisms and their interactions with one another and their environments. So, ibig sabihin, hindi lang living organisms mismo yung titingnan natin dito. Pinag-aaralan din natin dito kung paano ba makisalamuha yung organism na yun sa kanyang environment, sa iba pang mga organisms, and paano siya nabubuhay sa loob ng isang environment. Therefore, we can say that biology is a broad subject dahil marami tayong pwedeng pag-aralan dito, wherein it may range from the study of molecules that comprise life, such as the biological molecules and cells, up to the level of entire ecosystems. So, ito yung interactions with one another and their environments portion nung definition natin kanina. So, now that we have defined biology, why should we study? Why should we study biology? Ano bang kinalaman nito sa buhay natin? Mabubuhay naman tayo siguro nang walang biology, di ba? So, hindi tayo mabubuhay nang hindi natin nalalaman kung ano ang significance ng biology sa atin. Kasi, unang-una, it helps us understand the interconnectivity of life forms in the earth. So, kapag naintindihan na natin kung ano yung pagkakakonekta ng mga organisms inside the ecosystem or inside our planet, it develops awareness kung ano ba yung significance ng mga bawat hayop at halaman na yon. And this interconnectivity na matututunan natin can be directly relevant for our advocacy in protecting our planet, our species, and our environment. So, syempre, dahil nga nabubuhay tayo sa Earth, dapat lang na protektahan natin ito. And biology gives us the background information for that. Dahil kung walang biology, hindi natin maiintindihan kung paano ba tumatakbo ang sistema ng mundo at ng mga organisms na nakatira dito. So, through biology nga, naiintindihan natin yung interconnectivity na yon, and therefore, mula doon, makakakuha tayo or makakabuo tayo ng framework on how we would be able to protect our Earth and understand it better without destruction of the Earth. So second, it is the heart of many social and economic issues that we encounter today. So ito very relevant to kasi right now we are facing the COVID-19 pandemic, which is in of itself a biological pandemic kasi it is caused by a virus and it came from organisms and transmitted from humans to humans. So biologists are also at the cutting edge of ecological conservation research. So, ito yung connection naman doon sa unang nabanggit natin kanina. So, since biology is a very broad subject, students become much more aware of ecological issues types or and better able to understand situations where first let us talk about organismal biology. For example, from the name itself, organismal, urbanization and flattening of our agricultural lands. So, organisms. Naintindihan natin through biology or its branches we are all familiar with. It is the study of animals in general. And however, yung zoology, pwede pa natin siyang para sa atin kasi binabawasan nito yung quality i-branch out pa into, therefore, more specific fields of study or through other branches of biology, which is the study of mammals to us, or it can give us the ideas to develop ornithology is for birds using our natural resources. So, kumbaga, we can use biology as a means and as an end. It is the study of birds kasi use it as a means of determining what is the issue, and we can use it combine it with logos, which means to eradicate, then you get ornithology. So, ornis and lastly, isa pang importance ng pag-aaral ng biology is next we have herpetology, which is the study of reptiles and amphibians. So same case din doon sa ornithology, but in this field of science, meron for reptiles and amphibians ay herpetology. And combine it with logos, you have For example, agriculture. So, animal behavior. Ecology naman is for the study animal of welfare. So, ganun din, ethics naman ang Greek word or Greek root word ng forestry, environmentalist, therefore, research, plant pathologists, marine biology. And lastly, zoography. So, yun yung mga, and this is the study of habitats naman. Careers na so, we can think of zoography or pwede natin zoology if we want to pursue zoology, a deeper understanding of geography. Kasi tinitingnan dito sa zoography kung paano nag-i-interact yung isang organism na nabubuhay sa kanyang natural habitat. Next, let us move on from botany. So, botany, alam naman natin yan, it is the study of plants. And pwede pa natin ulit to i-branch out into more specific branches. We have agronomy, which is the study for crop production or crop science. So, yun yung other term for agronomy. Then, we have bryology, which is the study of bryophytes or yung mga sinaunang halaman natin. We all know that our ancient plants or the first plants to live on Earth are non-vascular bryophytes. So, yun yung mga mosses, liverworts, hornworts. So, yun yung wala silang well-defined vascular system on their leaf systems or leaf structures. Next, we have dendrology, which is the study of woody plants. So, dito papasok yung pag-aaral natin sa tree rings. Di ba? Pag nagputol tayo ng puno, we can determine the age of the tree through its tree rings that we can find from the stumps o yung mga pinagputulan. Makikita natin, meron siyang mga rings doon, and that gives us the age of a tree. And yung pag-aaral na yun or that kind of situation falls under the study of dendrology. So, next we have horticulture, which is the study of gardening plants naman. So, typically, agronomy and horticulture are related to each other dahil they are both filed or they can be both placed under agriculture kasi tinitingnan natin dito yung cultivation of plants. So, si agronomy, cultivation of crops like rice, mais, sugarcane, coconut. So, horticulture naman, it is about gardening plants. So, ito yung mga flowering plants like orchids and the others. And another subfield of botany is pomology, which is the study of fruits. So, fruits ng mga plants and as well as fruiting trees. So, for example, meron kang puno ng mangga. We all know that a mango is a fruit. Therefore, when we study mango trees, it is a cross between the study of trees, which is dendrology, and the study of pomology. So, next, punta naman tayo sa isa pang branch ng organismal biology, which is microbiology. So, again, meron ulit tayo mga sub-disciplines na makikita under microbiology. So, first, let us talk about protozoology. So, makikita natin root word, protozo. So, it means the study of protozoa and protists. Next, we have bacteriology. So, bacteriology, from the name itself, makikita natin, it is the study of bacteria. And yung two main types nito, yung archaea and eubacteria. Next, we have mycology, which is the study of fungi. So, myco, ito yung mga prefix that we can use when we are referring for mushrooms or fungi. So, myco. So, other terms pa na merong myco is mycoremediation, which is the remediation of nature through mushrooms. Next, we have phycology, which is the study of algae. So, ito naman yung mga algae, ito yung mga photosynthetic microorganisms na nakikita natin sa dagat. So, doon sila nabubuhay. And lastly, we have virology, which is the study of viruses. However, there has been a long-standing debate whether virus is actually a living organism or not. Makikita natin yan mamaya dahil pag-uusapan natin kung ano ba yung mga criteria na tutulong sa atin para tukuyin kung ano ba yung living organism sa non-living organism. So, at the end of this discussion, I want you to think about whether the virus or a virus like the COVID-19 or SARS-CoV-2 to be specific is a living organism or not, based on the criteria that we will talk about later. Now that we have talked about organismal biology, punta naman tayo sa another major branch of biology, which is structural biology. So, kung kanina, organismal, tinitingnan natin yung organisms as a whole, ngayon tinitingnan naman natin dito is the structures of living organisms. So, ano ba yung mga fields or disciplines na nakapaloob dito sa structural biology? So, first, we have morphology, from the root term morph. So, ito yung mga tatandaan natin para mabilis natin siyang makabisado or ma-familiarize. So, when we talk about morphology, we talk about the form or the external structures or external appearances of a living organism. So, kung ano yung nakikita natin by our naked eyes or through a microscope, yun yung morphological studies kung tawagin sa research. So, that is morphology. Punta naman tayo sa physiology. When we say physiology, it is the study of internal processes like digestion, respiration, and others. So, yun yung physiology. Madali lang siya. So, anatomy. So, kung si physiology naman, internal processes. Si anatomy naman, tinitingnan natin dito yung internal structure. So, for example, we have a organ called heart, yung puso natin. When we want to study how blood flows into the heart or into and outside the heart, so makikita natin, papasok siya sa physiology dahil internal processes ang circulation of blood. However, if we want to study specifically yung structure ng heart, for example, yung mga valves and yung aorta and yung mga blood vessels na nandun, yung cardiac muscles, dito naman siya papasok sa anatomy. And a more specific study of anatomy leads us to cytology, so which is the study of cells. So balik tayo sa example natin sa heart. Alam natin na heart is made up of cardiac muscles. And these cardiac muscles are made up of muscle cells. And if we want to study those specific cells or muscle cells that comprise the cardiac sheaths of the heart, so papasok naman yan dito sa cytology. So, di ba makikita natin, sobrang, sa isang organ lang, sobrang dami na nating pwedeng pag-aralan. And that's what makes biology very fascinating. Kasi, it looks like the possibilities are endless and you are always up for a continuous exploration. Hindi porket meron na naka-explore nito, hanggang dun na lang. Kasi pwede mo pa siyang aralin ulit and soon enough, you can see another pattern or another mechanism behind those structures of the body na pwede pa nating ulit aralin hanggang sa maging lumalim yung understanding natin sa topic na yon. And lastly, we have histology, which is the study of tissues. So, alam naman natin na ang tissues is a clump of cells with similar functions working together. So, yun naman yung histology. Ang makikita natin talagang magkakakonekta sila and they all refer to the structure of the body of a living organism. Now that we have talked about structural biology, punta naman tayo ngayon sa developmental biology, which talks about how a living organism develops and forms. So, from the names of development, so yun yung pag-uusapan natin dito sa developmental biology. So, first we have embryology. So, makikita natin from the name itself, embryo, which is the study of embryo and fetuses, which are formed upon or after fertilization in the uterus of a female body. So, yun. So, next we have ontogeny, which is the study of lifespans. So, tinitingnan nito yung pangkabuuang buhay ng isang organism mula sa moment na pinanganak siya hanggang sa moment na mamatay iyon. So, kapag inaaral natin yung kung ano ba yung nangyari noong buhat nung ipanganak siya, nung lumaki, nung tumanda, nung namatay. So, when we are able to study the processes behind it, patterns behind it, observe some trends, so that can be classified under the study of ontogeny. So, which is the study of lifespans nga. So, another thing na pinag-aaralan this developmental biology is evolution, which is the origin and differentiation of organisms over time. So, prime example nga nito is humans na nanggaling nga daw sa primates na naging bipedal over time. So, yun. So, bakit siya kasama dito sa developmental biology? Dahil over time, nagkakaroon ng mutations and errors sa genetic codes ng organisms and yung aggregation or pagsasama-sama noong mga mutations and genetic errors sa reproduction ng isang organism combined with natural selection. So, dito papasok yung evolution dahil over time nga nagbabago yung structures ng katawan ng isang organism due to the genetic errors nga. Next, we have paleontology. So, which is the study of fossils and remains. So, study of paleontology is highly linked or highly connected with evolution. Dahil nakikita natin kung nate-trace natin kung saan ba nagmula yung mga organisms na nakikita natin ngayon. Kung sino ba yung mga ancestors nila. And lastly, we have genetics, which is the study of heredity. So, maiko-connect din natin siya dito sa evolution dahil tinitingnan natin dito yung reproduction process and yung change over time due to changes in environment, natural selection, and others. And lastly, ito pa yung ibang fields, major branches ng biology. So, we have the interactional biology. So, from the name itself, interaction, so makikita natin paano nakikisalamuha and paano nabubuhay ang isang organism sa kanyang ecosystem or habitat. So, we have two subdisciplines under the interactional biology. So, we have the ecology, which is the study of ecosystems, food chains, ecological niches, and among others. And so, yun yung ecology. And when we want to study the behavior of a certain organism while living through a ecosystem, it can be classified under the study of ethology. So, and lastly, we have the modern biology. So, ito na yung mga current fields of research natin ngayon. And we have biotechnology, which is the study of genetic engineering. So, dito naman pumapasok yung concepts of recombinant DNA, gene cloning, gene sequencing, polymerase chain reaction, DNA profiling and fingerprinting, and among others. Now that we have talked about the branches of biology, and alam naman na natin na biology is the study of life, what do we mean by life? We all know, or alam natin, ang isang living organism kapag nakakita tayo, for example, nakakita tayo ng halaman, masasabi natin yan, yes, that is a living organism. However, there is no clear consensus or wala pang napagkakasunduang definition on what characterizes life. However, one of the popular definitions for life is that organisms are open systems that maintain homeostasis, are composed of cells, have a life cycle, undergo metabolism, can grow, adapt to their environment, respond to stimuli, reproduce, and evolve. So, ito yung mga characteristics daw na dapat nating makita sa isang organism so that we would be able to classify it or term it as a living organism. So, gaya na sabi ko kanina, since ito yung pag-uusapan natin ngayon, while we are discussing, isipin nyo if viruses or can be considered as living organisms based on the criteria na makikita natin sa mga susunod na slides. So, first characteristic of life is order, because living organisms are highly organized and coordinated structures that consist of one or more cells. So, bakit nakalagay dito one or more cells? Kahit ba one cell lang, pwede na siyang i-consider as a living organism? Yes. So, yung mga pumapasok dito sa mga single-celled or unicellular organisms, dito pumapasok yung mga bacteria. And yung mga more, yung comprise naman ng mas marami pa sa one cell, dito na mapapasok yung multicellular organisms. So, dito na mapapasok yung ating mga eukaryotes, which will be discussed on future sessions. So, yan. So, makikita natin sa picture, meron tayong palaka dito. We can say that a frog is a living organism because it is highly organized. So makita natin, merong mga cells dito that are responsible for the feet or for their locomotion. Meron ding mga cells specialized for their eyesight. And meron ding mga cells specialized for their skin, especially if the scales of a frog are poisonous or venomous. Na makikita natin, organized yung mga cells and coordinated yung mga structures niya dahil napagkoconnect-connecta sila ng brain or ng utak nila. So, yun. So, yun yung mga characteristics or descriptions that allows us to classify a living organism based on order. Another characteristic of life is sensitivity or response to stimuli, because living organisms respond to environmental stimuli through internal or external changes in their body. And prime example of this is the phototrophism of sunflower plants. Alam naman natin na ang sunflower plants ay humaharap sa araw kahit nasa ang direction man ang sun. And nakita natin umaayon yung katawan nila doon. And that is an external change in their body, specifically in structure. So, a flexible segment of a sunflower stem just below the flower responds to pressure within the motor cells. So, ito naman yung internal aspect ng response to stimuli, causing the sunflower to turn towards the light. Life is this plant then traps light to enhance photosynthesis, reproduce their own kind, creating food from life are passed on to their offspring. Since sunflowers exhibit phototrophism or heliotrophism, it increases the flower for a living organism to be considered as an organism with life, and this also increases the rate of pollen germination. So there are different types. Therefore, we can conclude reproduction. So we have the sunflower really is the mating and production of offspring through fertilization, living organism, and because it has response to stimulus or environmental stimuli. Reproduction, which includes the binary fission and mitosis. Another characteristic of life is the evolutionary adaptation, because as living organisms reproduce, errors and mutations in the genetic code are bound to happen. This causes the genetic composition to change within a population, and combined with natural selection nga, dito na nagsisimula yung evolutionary processes. We can see in the figure here, isa siyang uri ng seahorse. We can call it the pygmy. Sulat natin, pygmy seahorse. So makikita natin, kakaiba yung itsura niya, no? And para siyang mga corals na makikita natin sa ilalim ng dagat. And this is a process of evolution. Dahil time and time again, dahil doon sa environment nila and due to the continuous reproduction of these pygmy seahorses, na-adapt na nila kung ano yung itsura noong habitat na kinabibilangan nila. And this adaptation grants them more chances of survival and ensures the continuity of their species. And that is the essence of evolutionary adaptation. Another characteristics of life is the regulation and homeostasis or steady state of an organism, because organisms can maintain their bodily functions and perform internal activities despite changes in their environment. So homeostasis is frequently observed or evidently observed on fishes, specifically those living in seawater, because these seawater fishes constantly regulate the amount of salt and water in their body, because kapag sobrang konti yung salt sa kanilang katawan, pwede silang mamatay, and pwede rin naman silang mamatay din kapag naman sobrang dami nung salt sa kanilang katawan. Therefore, they must constantly regulate it so as to continue the other internal activities in their body, such as respiration, digestion, and among others. So, typically, pinaghihiwalay yung regulation and homeostasis as characteristics of life. However, in some reference books din, pinagsasama sila because if an organism does not maintain homeostasis, it will not also be able to regulate other internal bodily processes inside its body. So, ibig sabihin, they are connected to each other, na kapag walang homeostasis, walang regulation na mangyayari. And for you to have, or for an organism to have regulation or regulatory activities inside its body, it must constantly maintain homeostasis or steady state or equilibrium. The sixth characteristic of life is the energy processing, because all organisms use a source of energy for their metabolic activities. So, dito na papasok yung concept na ang metabolism sa ating discussion. So, in the figure, makita natin there is a butterfly na nakadapo sa isang flower. And this butterfly obtains fuel in the form of nectar from flowers. The butterfly will then use this chemical energy stored in the nectar to power flight and other work and continue its other metabolic and internal processes. So just like humans, kailangan natin ng pagkain para mabuhay, and it is the same way, or it goes in the same fashion as different organisms. We have, so for example, yung mga halaman naman, kailangan nila because living organisms can grow and develop their own body by sunlight in order to from carry out photosynthesis. And in animals, we have makikita naman natin dito, merong isang sapling na tumutubo, or merong isang uri ng halaman. Utilize different kinds of inherited information yung naka-code sa kanyang mga their metabolic controls the pattern of growth and development of these organisms. So gaya nga nung halaman na to, yung codes niya yung genes niya ang responsible kung paano ba siya lalaki without changing its shape. So kumbaga halimbawa, hahaba lang siya, yayabong lang yung ngayon at natapos na natin yung mga dahon niya and characteristics of life, tigas lang yung mga sanga niya, pero hindi siya mag-iiba ng anyo and hindi siya mag-iiba ng shape. So kumbaga kung ano yung hugis ng puno, ganun talaga yung magiging shape niya. So we have the 7 characteristics of life on the left column, and we have several descriptions naman dito sa right column, and we have to do a matching type of activity. So if you want, you can try this, and the answers will be given at the very last slide. Ngayon napag-usapan na natin yung characteristics of life, definition of biology, and the branches of biology. Let us now move on to themes of biology. Because when we are studying biology, the information that we encounter can be organized into a comprehensible framework. So para mas mabilis nating maintindihan yung mga inaaral natin sa biology, magkakaroon tayo ng mga unifying themes, which are ways of thinking about life that will still be useful decades from now. So meron tayong 5 unifying themes for biology, and pag-uusapan natin or hahapyawan natin siya isa-isa. The first unifying theme of biology is organization. So, when we are distilling the biosphere from a broad perspective to a more specific division, it underlies the principle of reductionism. So, we can observe it, or we can visualize it as and observing from the verse naman, so kung halimbawa you go from the very broad subject to the very more broad or the pinaka-more specific division. Biological organization. So the study of life on Earth extends from the microscopic emergent molecules and cells that make up the organisms to the global scale of the entire living planet. For as biologists, although we can divide this enormous range into different levels of it will not take place if chlorophyll and other chloroplast molecules are simply this journey depicted as a series of numbered steps highlights the underlying mechanism biological organization systems in order for photosynthesis to carry out, because kapag nga chloroplast lang na nasa test tube, malabong mangyari ang photosynthesis dahil hindi naman siya nasa leaf system. Ngayon, tignan naman natin ang mga levels of organization na binabanggit ko kanina. So, we have 10 levels of biological organization, and sisimulan natin doon sa pinakamalawak, which is the biosphere. The biosphere consists of all life on Earth and all of the places where life exists. Most regions of land, most bodies of water, the atmosphere up to an altitude of several kilometers, and even sediments far below the ocean floor. So ibig sabihin, lahat ng nakikita natin na pwedeng tirhan ng organism, as long as merong nabubuhay doon, we can classify it as a part of the biosphere. So yun yung ibig sabihin natin ng biosphere. And pinakamadaling example lang nito is the Earth in general dahil the Earth consists of all the ecosystems and all types of habitats na nakikita natin sa planet natin. So, punta naman tayo sa susunod na uh, hierarchy of biological organization. So, we have the ecosystem. So, our first scale change, so, halimbawa, pumunta naman tayo sa isang bundok na puro damo lang and puro halaman. So, this is an example of an ecosystem. Other examples of ecosystem includes tropical forest, grassland, deserts, and coral reefs. So, what do we mean by an ecosystem? So, an ecosystem consists of all living things in a particular area, along with all the non-living components of the environment with which life interacts, like the abiotic factors of soil, water, atmospheric gases, and light. So, yun. So, yun yung ibig sabihin natin ng ecosystem. When we say ecosystem, it is the living things plus non-living things in a certain area. So, yan. So, living plus non-living in a certain area. So, kapag pumunta pa tayo sa mas specific, we can see communities. So, what do we mean by community? Community is an array of organisms inhabiting a particular ecosystem. Ngayon natatapos na tayo, for example, doon tayo sa isang organism na sa isang level of biological organization. Marami tayong makikita iba't ibang natin pag-usapan yung mga iba't ibang uri ng hayop, of mushrooms, and other fungi. So ngayon punta naman tayo ngayon sa mga micro components or micro levels of that are too small dahil ito na yung pumapasok na tayo or we are going deeper into an organism. Kung sa ecosystem, meron kasamang, so first, punta tayo ngayon sa organs. Living and non-living organisms sa an organ. Dito naman sa community, dito nagsisimula yung structural living organisms of life when we are going and going further, going more specific. So when we say of an organ, it is a body part made up of multiple and what do we mean by population? Specific functions. A population consists of, so for example, sa isang halaman, we have the leaves, living within the bounds of these specific areas that interbreed with each and within an organ. So kung sa community, it is made up of several tissues that has a distinct arrangement sa population contributes particular natin dito properties to organ function. Community, so when we say organs, it is a collection of tissues. So for example, grupo ng mga kabayo na namumuhay sama-sama and they interbreed with each other. So, for example, tumingin tayo ng tissue ng isang halaman under a microscope as a population. We can define tissue as a group of cells that work together. So, sa madaling sabi, population a specialized function. Same species. So, yun yung simple definition of tissues. Syempre, if they live together, these are a group of cells working together with the same function. And kapag naman pumunta pa tayo sa more specific, tinitingnan na natin ngayon. So, pinaka-typical nito is yung jigsaw pattern na nakikita natin sa mga kapag sinabi natin individual, when we are organism, these are the individual under a microscope. Kaso wala kasi itong picture dito. So, you can just search for it. So, living ngayon nabanggitan natin na ang tissues are made up of similar cells. Punta naman tayo ngayon sa cells. So, what do we mean by cells? As we all know, cell as the fundamental organism of life. So, as well as other animals living on the ecosystem, other fungi, so some organisms consist of a single cell which performs all the functions of life, which is commonly observed in bacteria. However, other organisms are multicellular and feature a division of labor among specialized cells. So, yun. So, yun yung ibig sabihin naman natin ng cells. So, kung tatandaan natin para mabilis, cells are the basic units of life. Ayan. So, alam naman natin na kapag tinignan natin ng isang cell, meron iba't iba pang mas maliliit na components ito that we call the organelles. And ito na ang susunod na level of the second unifying theme of studying biology is information. So when we talk about organelles, the DNA and RNA functional components present in cells. Genetic makeup. For example, sa isang because genetic information is encoded of course for it to carry out photosynthesis, it must have through DNA that transmits heritable information. So yung chloroplast na yun, this is a type of specialized. So yung functional component DNA or yung genes natin, yung responsible kung bakit yung is to carry out or facilitate the process of photosynthesis. This allows us for evolution. So para mabilis natin tandaan, when we say organelles, it is a functional DNA sequences program a cell's protein synthesis by transcription into mRNA and translation into a pinakamaliit or the most specific level of biological organization. So this paragraph is typically summarizes the central a molecule is a chemical structure consisting of two or more units called atoms represented as just talks about the computer transcription and translation natin siya of genes skeletal form, ganito siya typically. For example, na siyang nagmamanifest H2O, which means water sa ating katawan, or diba? Either internally or externally. So, the next unifying theme of biology is energy and matter. Because energy flows through an ecosystem and all organisms must perform work which requires energy. And this work can also be called as the ecological niche. Ecological niche or niche. Because this ecological niche, ito yung parang ambag. Ito yung ambag ng organism sa ecosystem para patuloy yung cycle ng energy. And ano ba yung manifestation ng energy flow into the ecosystem? That is the food webs and food chains. So, alam naman natin, di ba, there are producers and there are consumers in an ecosystem. And the presence of autotrophs and heterotrophs, this ensures that energy flows through an ecosystem, which means that every organism will also be able to perform their ecological niche and in the process, acquire energy nga dahil nga, for example, kumakain sila, nape-perform na nila yung ecological niche nila or yung ambag nila sa ecosystem, nakakakuha pa sila ng energy which can be used for other purposes. For example, locomotion, digestion, respiration, and others. And matter naman, yung matter naman is nagfo-flow din into an ecosystem. For example, meron tayong mga biogeochemical cycles like the nitrogen cycle, carbon cycle, oxygen cycle, and water cycle in the environment. So these chemicals undergo a cycle between organisms and the environment. So if you are interested in learning about these types of cycles, you can check out or you can search for it, these types of cycles, or you can search biogeochemical cycles for a general understanding of this topic. Next, we have the fourth unifying theme, which is the interactions. So, in feedback regulation, a process is regulated by its output or end product. In negative feedback, accumulation of the end product slows its production, while in positive feedback, an end product speeds up its own production. So, ano naman ba yung kahalagahan nitong physical feedback nito sa ating environment? For example, kumain tayo ng matamis. And alam naman natin na ang pancreas produces insulin to regulate our blood sugar levels. So for example, kapag kumain tayo ng matamis, the sugar in our blood level rises, which stimulates the cells to secrete insulin. And lastly, the unifying theme na ni pancreas ang biology is the evolutionary process to take up because evolution is the process of change to transform, thus decreasing the blood. It accounts for the unity and diversity. So this eliminates the stimulus for insulin secretion. And this also explains the pathway. One characteristic of life, which is the output process or yung paggawa ng insulin, negatively regulates the process. So pinaka-prevalent example naman ito is kapag naman positive sa Galapagos Islands na pinag-aaralan or positive regulation. So, makikita natin yung nangyayari naman ditong example natin doon kapag nagkaroon tayo ng sugat, ng mga finches na yun na yung dugo, highly adapted kung anong klaseng, because when a blood vessel is damaged, structures in the blood called platelets begin to aggregate at the site. So, positive feedback occurs as chemicals released by the platelets like fibrinogen and fibrin attracts more platelets. So, these platelets
makikita
then
natin yung
clump together
pagkakaiba-iba
and
ng
yun
mga
yung
hayop
nakikita
na yun,
natin
even
as
though they
platelet.
came
And
they
the
come from
platelet
a
pile up
shared
then initiates
ancestor,
a complex process
it
that seals
explains
the
the
wound
match
of
of organisms
clot.
to their
So yun,
environments.
so yun
And
yung through evolution nga,
process ng
it also
negative
promotes the
feedback and
diversity
positive
of
feedback.
life.
So kapag negative feedback,
So, and that concludes our discussion for the module 1, which is the introduction to biology and the science of life. So, if you have any questions, contact me at Messenger, and here is the link. And if you want to email me, eto din yung email ko, pwede nyo na akong kontakin dyan, and I will respond as long as I am available. And yeah, that concludes our module 1. Thank you for listening and see you in the next module, which will be uploaded tomorrow. Thank you and God bless.